What's going on, folks? Ted from Immersion here, and thank you all so much for the almost 60,000 views and I think over 1,000 comments on the last video I made talking about the leaks from Mordenkainen's Monsters in the Multiverse. By the way, this number here is now 88.7. I believe it was 88.3 in that video, which I think came out 2 days ago, which is absolutely wild. So thank you all so much who have subscribed. But if you have not, I'd love to make that number look like 100K so we could hang that sweet YouTube play button somewhere on the wall over here. But anyway, if you like this kind of stuff and the other kind of content that I do, consider subscribing to the channel. Also, I've got a bunch of other content planned to come out aside from just the stuff that we're talking about today, but, you know, more to come on that later. And also, because of those so many comments that I mentioned, I'm making a part 2 video because I'm going to do my best. I tried to keep up with the comments, and it just eventually got to the point where it's overwhelming. I do also want to say, if you're curious about the monsters in the books, I would check out, as in like the ones that you would fight, you know, setting against your players. Check out Bob World Builder's video. I'll put a link to in the description to that video as well, where he basically took the screenshots of the table of contents and compared it to Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes and Volo's Guide to Monsters, and then said, is this monster in the book? And basically gave you a rundown of what's in the book, what's not in the book, and is there anything new. Lastly, before we dive into what we're going to talk about, there are some generalizations that I can give you up front that have been made to basically across the board. It seems that all monsters with any kind of unarmed strike damage, right, like if they had claws or a bite or something like that, all of those have been updated to a D6 damage across the board. A lot of things that were considered to be, I didn't necessarily think they were overpowered, but they were very powerful abilities, have been adjusted to either be proficiency bonus times per long rest as opposed to once per long or short rest. And unfortunately, for a lot of those that made them what a lot of people liked to play them for, they have sort of been nerfed, if you will, in some cases by a significant margin, to now just do proficiency bonus times, or proficiency bonus worth of damage as opposed to whatever it was they had done before. Also, I wanted to call attention to something that several of you called attention to as well. The monsters from the sort of Travelers of the Multiverse, or whatever that Unearthed Arcana was called, with all the Spelljammer races, the GIF and the Plasmoid and all that, they are not in this book, which does further allow me to believe that we will be getting some sort of Planescape Spelljammer style book sometime this year where those races will appear in it. So anyway, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into part 2. So here you can see we have sort of the other generic things. We talked about ability scores, we talked about languages. Creature type is here as it states, and it says lifespan, basically says all, you know, D&D races pretty much live about a century, and then it does say at the bottom, if typical members of a race in this book can live longer than a century, that fact is mentioned in the race's description. As it is not something that is specifically called out, you'll have to read their flavor text at the top to see. Now, I haven't read through all of the flavor text to look for that. I focused primarily on the mechanics, because that's what I like and a lot of you seem to like. But I would be curious if this update, because it says specifically if it lives longer. Now, we knew certain races, like Tortle, for instance, were very short-lived races. I think living to around, was it either 35 or 50 years or something, a very short in lifespan. But now it's saying it's about a century. So did they just get a huge improvement in their lifespan? It's not really a huge factor, but it can come up in some games and become important. And then lastly, for height and weight, similar to what we've seen, they basically say pick something from the player's handbook that you think is a rough analog to your particular race that you're playing, and use that. And the reason I think they went with that as well is several other races now have the opportunity to be small or medium size, whereas in previous instances, they were all just medium. Okay, so moving on to the first one, we have the Bugbear. I will also say you can kind of see it here. There's some of them have received new art, which is cool. Some have not. But the Bugbear is a weird instance in which it got nothing but buffs, in my opinion. All right. It does say, there's a little blurb up here about the Feywild, as they do now have Fey ancestry, as do all of the Goblinoid races. And speaking of goblinoid, there's this thing where it says they're humanoid, but you are also considered a goblinoid for any prerequisite or effect that requires you to be a goblinoid. As far as I know, there are no things that exist. Maybe like there's some one-off magic item in an Adventures League thing or something that's like, if you're a goblin, then X. But as far as I know, there's nothing that says you need to, like, benefits you for being a goblin. There are some things that say, you know, requires attunement by a dwarf, requires attunement by an elf, things like that, but nothing for a goblinoid, and it specifically referenced goblinoid, not just bugbears. So that makes me think we might be seeing something like this or new things like this in the future, which is pretty exciting. And their size is medium. And then we take a look at their abilities here. Dark Vision, Fey Ancestry, which I should say now is updated to only include advantage on saving throws to avoid or end the Charmed condition. The immunity to magical sleep that used to be part of Fey Ancestry is now baked into the Trance ability. Long Limbed is still there. When you make a melee attack, you can make the reach 5 feet longer. I'm surprised that that wasn't proficiency bonus times per long rest. That seemed like the kind of powerful thing they've been nerfing. Powerful Build is the same as it is. Sneaky gets you proficiency with stealth, but look at this new line here. In addition, without squeezing, you can move through and stop in a space large enough for a small creature. That seems like a general buff as well. And then lastly, we have an update to Surprise Attack. I'll say this now as well. I've read through a ton of these, and I've tried to do my best to read through all of the originals, but I'm sure there's some that I'm going to miss. But anyway, if you hit a creature with an attack roll, that creature takes an extra 2d6 damage if it hasn't taken a turn yet in the current combat. I believe it was previously like once a turn, if a creature is stunned, or surprised rather, you can attack a creature, one creature, and it does 2d6 damage or something like that. The way this works, right, if you get a good drop on the initiative and there's 3 enemies and you're like a fighter that has 3 attacks, you could hit 1, 2, 3, and each one of them will take that extra 2d6 damage. As a reminder, the 2d6 damage is a roll of dice, and since it's a roll of dice, that does mean that it can benefit and will double those dice on a critical. So, surprisingly, Bugbear, nothing but buffs. Alright, Centaur, I believe, is entirely unchanged other than their hooves being updated to a d6. They are still considered Fey, they still have 40-foot movement speed. Charge, I believe, is exactly the same. Move 30 feet, hit with a melee weapon attack. You can make a bonus action. Immediately follow with a bonus action, making 1 attack with your hooves. If we were to go to the next thing, you can see they have Equine Build, which is basically the equivalency of Powerful Build, and then they have the thing about them being able to climb, right? When you climb a ladder or something like that. Any climb that requires hands and feet is difficult. Each foot costs 4 foot extra instead of the normal 1 foot. Excuse me, and then we see the hooves again, a d6, and natural affinity. Choose one of the following skills from that list. I believe that's all the same. Okay. Eladrin got some significant updates, and you'll see some of these are sort of across the board for these sort of new elves. So, I don't know. Yeah, okay. So we can see here, humanoid, which you are considered to be an elf for any prerequisites that considers you to be, or requires you to be an elf. So that would be things like the feats, elven accuracy, and so on. Medium size, speed of 30 feet, dark vision, Fey Ancestry. Again, as we can see, Fey Ancestry is advantage on saving throws against being charmed, and the charmed or to end the charmed condition. Now this is going to be kind of difficult. Oh boy. All right. I don't know if I have another. Do I have another shot of the Eladrin? We might have to pull this up on the phone. No, we don't. All right, so I'm gonna have to pull this up on my phone to be able to get you guys the full. I thought I could zoom it in and read it, and I did my best to try and get you to try to see if I could find better quality pictures, but you know, I've got what I was sent, so that's that. They do still have Face Step as it was before, but let me zoom in here and see what I can get. As a bonus action, you can magically teleport. I'll zoom it in, but you won't be able to read it. You can magically teleport up to 30 feet to an unoccupied space you can see. You can use this trait proficiency bonus times per long rest. Then when you reach 3rd level, it gets an additional effect. The DC is 8 plus your proficiency bonus plus intelligence, wisdom, or charisma. We'll see that that's pretty much true across the board as well. The intelligence, wisdom, or charisma you choose when you choose this race. I think with the exception of the Aasimar is the only one that doesn't have that. If you choose the autumn option, when you use your face step, choose up to 2 creatures within 10 feet of you that must make a wisdom save or be charmed by you for 1 minute or until you or your companions deal any damage to them. Winter, let's see. 1 creature of your choice within 5 feet of you before the teleport must make a wisdom saving throw or be frightened until the end of the next turn. Spring is you can choose a willing creature within 5 feet of you. You can, I think that's choose 1 willing creature within 5 feet of you. That creature then teleports instead of you, appearing within 30 feet. And summer, immediately after you face step, each creature of your choice you can see within 5 feet takes fire damage equal to your proficiency bonus. You also have keen senses, giving you proficiency in the perception skill. And then trance, but all the trances have been updated, so I wonder if we're going to see this on the other elves. It's also been reworded to be very clear what it does. You don't need to sleep, and magic can't put you to sleep. You can finish, and this is the part I'm talking about, you can finish a long rest in 4 hours if you spend those hours in a trance-like meditation during which you retain consciousness. That is huge. You retain your consciousness, and it flat out tells you it's a long rest in 4 hours. But get this. Whenever you finish the trance, you can change your season as the Eladrin, right? Change between autumn, winter, spring, or summer. But also, you gain 2 proficiencies that you don't have, each one with a weapon or a tool of your choice from the player's handbook. You magically acquire these proficiencies by shared memories, blah, blah, blah. That is what it is for for the Shadar-Kai, as well as for the Sea Elf. Now have this new version of trance that flat out says, don't need to sleep, can't be put magically to sleep, long rest in 4 hours, awake, conscious during that, and you get to choose 2 skills. 2 proficiencies, weapons, or tools from the PHB. They specifically say the PHB because I think that means you can't get things like the Eberron double scimitar. All right. Goblin, again, is a humanoid, still considers to be goblinoid. Dark vision, we now have Fey ancestry on the Goblin. Again, advantage to save the charm condition. So I'm going to, if I've talked about them before, I'm going to try to just move past them quickly. Now, Nimble Escape is unchanged. You can take the disengage or hide action as a bonus action on each of your turns. However, big changes to Fury of the Small, and I missed it the first go around. But anyway, check a look at this. When you damage a creature with an attack or spell and the creature size is larger than yours, you can cause that attack or damage to deal extra damage. Mind you, this extra damage used to be equal to your level. It is now equal to your proficiency bonus. That is a massive nerf in damage, depending on how you had builds to do with that, which is exceptionally unfortunate for the Goblin fans out there. And this has been changed to proficiency bonus times per long rest. It used to be once per long or short rest, which I thought was all it was, where they just changed the usage of it. But no, they changed the damage as well, which to me makes that... It's a viable feature, yes, but not nearly a ghost of its former self. Hobgoblin, completely overhauled to be similar to the Folk of the Feywild Hobgoblin. Speed is 30 feet, medium size, dark vision, Fey ancestry. You also have the Fey gift. You can use this trait to take the help action as a bonus action, and you can do so a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus. You regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. So flat out, starts at the gate, help as a bonus action, proficiency bonus times per long rest. Then starting at 3rd level, choose one of the options below each time you take the help action with that trait. Okay? Hospitality. You and the creature you help gain a number of temp HP equal to a d6 plus your proficiency bonus. Passage. You and the creatures you help increase your walking speed by 10 feet until the start of your next turn. Or Spite. Until the start of your next turn, the first time the creature you help hits a target with an attack roll, that target has disadvantage on the next attack roll it makes within the next minute. Now, you could stop there, and I would say that that's fine, but they didn't stop there. There's more. Fortune from the Many. If you miss with an attack roll or fail an ability check or saving throw, so all three, you can draw on your bonds of reciprocity to gain a bonus to the roll equal to the number of allies you can see within 30 feet. Maximum bonus of, I think that says +3. You can use this trait a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus and get them all back on a long rest. So you can just choose to get a bonus. This was originally called, I think, Saving Face on the original Hobgoblin. But basically, yeah, it gets you a bonus based on the allies within 30 feet. So Hobgoblin, serious contender for a strong race. Now, Kenku fans, I hope you weren't hoping to still have your limited speech thing, because they've completely removed that from Kenku entirely. This is probably going to piss a lot of people off. But it also will make a lot of people happy who wanted to play like a cool bird race and didn't want to be an Aarakocra, but didn't want to have to try to figure out how to use other words to make, mimic the voices. Kenku now also have the ability to be medium or small sized, but they do have some cool new features. And I always liked Kenku, and I'll let you know that in previous editions, when Kenku appeared, they didn't have that limited speech thing. That was something that was made up for 5th edition. Expert duplication. When you copy writing or craft work produced by yourself or someone else, you have advantage on any ability checks you make to produce an exact duplicate, which is a pretty cool feature. Kenku recall. Proficiency in 2 skills of your choice. When you make an ability check using any skill in which you have proficiency, so this is not just the ones from the race, from any of them, you can give yourself advantage on the check before rolling the d20, and that is proficiency bonus times per long rest, just flat out self-advantage on ability checks that you are proficient with. And then they still retain their mimicry ability. You can accurately mimic sounds and voices. A creature that hears it needs to make a wisdom insight check. 8 plus your proficiency bonus plus your charisma modifier. So this happens to be one where it is indeed just flat your charisma modifier, not intelligence, wisdom, or charisma. So changes, I do think. So I can definitely see, and I'm gonna stop and we're gonna have a little conversation here. Yeah, there's gonna be changes and things in here that people are gonna be. I've seen it already in the comments. A lot of people are gonna be like, "What? Why did they remove the limited speech option? There's no." Now, a couple of things. One, this is supposed to be a setting agnostic Kenku, right? This is from like a source book, not from a source book. So perhaps the Kenku that we had originally received in Volo's Guide to Monsters were specifically to the Forgotten Realms, and maybe the Forgotten Realms Kenku are the ones that have the limited speech patterns, whereas this generic Kenku from the multiverse at whole does not have that. You could obviously, okay, here's another thing, folks. You could obviously play that way at your table if you would like to. I want to point that out, right? Now, even if you decide you want to use this new Kenku with its new abilities, you can still decide if you want at your table to do that limited speech thing. That's up to you, right? No one's going to tell you. I would be surprised. Let me say that. I can't say no one will, but I'd be surprised if you came up with this concept and the DM was just like, no, you can't do that. But I think the general consensus into the removal of that is to make this race approachable, right? A lot of folks would have been immediately turned off from that concept of the Kenku originally. And I've seen it happen at tables that I've played at or was going to play with people at. They're flipping through and they're like, ooh, Kenku looks really cool. I want to play that. And someone, the DM or a fellow player, will be like, well, just so you know, they can't actually talk. They do this, that, and the other thing on how they make their noises, or they use sampled words from other people. And then those players were like, oh, no, I don't want to do that. And they just moved on. Now you might see Kenkus in rotation because of this change. Again, take it with a grain of salt. Consider whatever, it is what it is. Moving on. Minotaur, unfortunately not a monstrosity, something I thought they were going to change. They do still have their horns, which do a d6 damage. Not too much of a change there. Actually, no change there. They were one of the only ones that had the d6, and then they gave that to everybody. Goring Rush, I believe, is exactly the same, as is Hammering Horns. The only thing they did was remove Imposing Presence or something like that gave them, I think, proficiency in Intimidation or Persuasion, and have replaced it with Labyrinthine Recall, which is you always know whichever direction is north and have constant advantage on survival checks to navigate or track. I think you probably should have just added Labyrinthine Recall on top of having the Imposing Presence feature where they just get a skill proficiency. I think that would have been fine. That's the changes that I would have made. Was it in my court? I wanted to show you new art for Shadar-Kai. Again, similar to the Eladrin, humanoid considered elf if needed to be. Blessing of the Raven Queen. As a bonus action, magically teleport 30 feet. You can use this trait proficiency bonus times per long rest. You also gain resistance. At 3rd level, you gain resistance to all damage when you teleport using this trait. The resistance lasts until the start of your next turn. During that time, you appear ghostly and translucent. Dark Vision and the new version of Fey Ancestry. I will also say, it's cool that this. Having seen the changes we're seeing to monsters, it's nice to see. I think this is how it was always written for the players, but this is a reminder you can't counterspell Blessing of the Raven Queen because it's not a spell. Keen Senses, again, we have proficiency in perception, necrotic resistance to necrotic damage, and then Trance, as we said, here's a closer look at the updated version. Don't need to sleep, magic can't put you to sleep, finish a long rest in 4 hours. When you finish this trance, you gain 2 proficiencies you don't have, each with a weapon or a tool. Now, I don't know if it's specifically written that way, each one with a weapon or a tool. So you could, in theory, I think I'm reading that as you could get 2 weapons or 2 tools, which could be very cool. That's also a really awesome feature, like if you're traveling through a dungeon and you find like a really cool weapon, and it's not a weapon that anybody could use, but like you could take a trance and then now you can use the weapon. It's pretty cool. All right, Yuan-Ti. Notice they also dropped... Oh, you know what I wanted to check? We can... we don't have a... Oh, here it is. Like other elves, Shadar-Kai can live to be over 750 years old. So it's right there. So we did see that. That was an example I wanted to take a look at. Yuan-Ti is listed here. Now, notice they did drop the pure blood from Yuan-Ti. I don't know if that matters or that's just the name. That was just a name choice they decided to remove. But this is almost exactly identical to a Yuan-Ti pureblood with one exception. Or sorry, 2. 1, they can be medium or small creatures. And there's a new art for the Yuan-Ti there, which is pretty cool. They still have dark vision. They still have magic resistance, advantage on saving throws against spells. They have poison resilience, which used to previously be poison immunity in the pureblood. Again, I don't know if this is a change to just the nomenclature of how we're going to call the race that the players play, or it's considered to be different, but advantage on saving throws to avoid or end the poison condition on yourself, and resistance to poison damage, no longer immunity. And you still have serpentine spellcasting, which is a thing that they did originally have. Poison spray cantrip, animal friendship an unlimited number of times, but can only work on snakes, and suggestion at 3rd level once per long rest, but it does still have, again, the new language. You can cast this with spell slots you have of 2nd level or higher. And then it's intelligence, wisdom, or charisma, your choice. Aarakocra, small update here. Big nerf on the fly speed. Flight is now equal to your walking speed, which is 30 feet. So they increased the Aarakocra's walking speed from 25 to 30. And their flight speed used to be 50. It has now been brought back down to 30. Is still limited to medium or heavy armor. Again, their talons were increased to a d6 damage, and they now have this ability called Wind Caller, where at 3rd level they can cast the Gust of Wind spell. Proficiency bonus, once you cast a spell, you can't do it again until you finish a long rest. It's weird that one doesn't happen to be proficiency bonus times per long rest, considering it's just one spell. But you can cast it with spell slots you have, and it's intelligence, wisdom, or charisma to cast it. Fairy, I'm not going to go through here because Fairy is exactly the same. But there you go. Satyr, also exactly the same, with the exception of the ram horn damage was increased to a d6 plus strength modifier in damage. Also, there is a weird thing they did where I think it might just be copy and paste, but when you hit them with the strike deals 1d6 plus your strength bludgeoning damage instead of the bludgeoning damage normal for an unarmed strike. So it's just a funky wording. It's bludgeoning. But either way, I think we all know what it means. It does d6 damage now, but Reveler is the same, magic resistance is the same, Mirthful Leaps is the same, and you are still a Fey with 35 feet of walking speed. All right, big shifts to the Aasimar. Okay, you are medium or small, so you get that benefit for the Aasimar. Dark vision still, resistance to necrotic and radiant damage still. You now also have healing hands, which you always had, but it used to be healing hit points equal to your level. It is now a pool of D4s equal to your proficiency bonus, and that is once per long rest. So, you'll start with 2d4 worth of healing, which again could potentially outclass healing at your level from early on. Eventually, you'd be at 6d4, which will could have the potential to be greater than your level ever could be. But I think I kind of like the dice pool, and there might be stuff where people have things where if you're rolling dice, right? I know there's a one warlock ability where when you roll the one, I think it's the Pact of the Chain, where if people go to roll dice instead of rolling dice, it's the maximum amount. Whereas you couldn't heal for the maximum amount when you were healing a static number in the past. So there may be other interactions where the dice pool actually benefits you. Light Bear, you still get the light cantrip, although it is limited to only being used for charisma. And you now have a thing called a Celestial Revelation, which is replacing the subclasses that we used to have of the Fallen, Scourge, and Protector Aasimar. You now get a Celestial Revelation, which is your ability you get at 3rd level. It is now activated on a bonus action, which is huge, which is pretty nice to see. It lasts for 1 minute or until you end it as a bonus action, and then it is once per long rest. Also interesting in the way they've changed things to have both Celestial Revelation and Healing Hands both be once per long rest, as opposed to having one of those be proficiency bonus times per long rest. I guess maybe Healing Hands is too powerful if it's proficiency bonus times per long rest. It is still your action to do so. I might make that change. But anyway, Necrotic Shroud, which is the Fallen Aasimar version. Flightless Wings sprout from your back temporarily. Creatures other than your allies within 10 feet of you must make a charisma saving throw based off of your charisma or become frightened of you until the end of your next turn. Until it ends, you can deal extra necrotic damage, which is another nerf here, to one target until you can deal extra necrotic damage once on each of your turns to one target when you deal damage to them with an attack or spell. The extra damage equals your proficiency bonus. This extra damage used to be equal to your level. It has been nerfed down now to just your proficiency bonus. I think if you were going to allow this to go down to just proficiency bonus worth of damage, and especially if you're going to limit both abilities to be once per long rest, I would not have limited this to once on each of your turns. I would have allowed it to be every turn. You know, you could, like, if I have 2 attacks and I hit you twice, I can only do extra damage equal to my proficiency bonus to you once. In the past, when it was extra damage equal to my level, and I could be doing 13, 17, 10, 8 damage, whatever, great. Now that it's limited to my proficiency bonus, I think it should be allowed on every strike. Radiant Consumption, this was the Scourge Aasimar. For the duration, you shed bright light in a 10-foot radius and dim light in another 10. At the end of each of your turns, each creature within 10 feet of you takes radiant damage equal to your proficiency bonus. And then again, you can deal radiant damage to anyone you attack with an attack or spell. Now, the way that's written, I can't tell if you're supposed to take that damage because it's each creature within 10 feet of you. Technically, you're a creature within 10 feet of you, so you might still take the damage. I think in the past, you used to take half of the damage, so I don't know if that's the case. And then a Radiant Soul is the one that gets the wings. Until the transformation ends, you get a flying speed equal to your walking speed. And once on each of your turns, you can do radiant damage. You can do your proficiency bonus. Heragon, also unchanged. Moving on. Lizardfolk. This one I'll see some updates, and I will be I could see some people being upset about this. Still medium size, still walking speed of 30 feet, and swim speed equal to your walking speed. One thing you'll notice that's not here is Cunning Artisan, the one that lets you make like weapons and armor and like ammunition out of the parts of fallen enemies. That's not here. They have removed that feature from the Lizardfolk. They do not have that anymore. Bite is a d6 damage. I think that was what it was previously, but that's there. Hold Breath is for up to 15 minutes. I think that's the same. The big change, I believe, is to Hungry Jaws, which was as a bonus action, you can make a special attack with your bite. It deals normal damage, and you gain temporary hit points equal to your proficiency bonus. I believe it used to be your constitution modifier. And this is also now proficiency bonus times per long rest, which I believe it used to be once a short rest. You still have natural armor of AC 13 plus dex. I believe that's the same. And nature's intuition as well. Your choice of 2 skill proficiencies is the same. But yeah, the lack of Cunning Artisan was a shocker because a lot of people seem to really like to pick Lizardfolks for that specifically. All right, Sea Elf. You are, again, considered an elf if you need to be. Walking speed of 30 feet, swim speed of, equal to your walking speed. You can breathe air and water, and you have resistance to cold damage. I believe the resistance is new. So that's awesome, a nice little buff to the Sea Elf, resistance to cold damage. You now have Dark Vision, which you always, I think, originally did have. Fey Ancestry. Let's check. Did the elves get the extra? Yep, 750 years old. That's there. The new version of Fey Ancestry, you also get Keen Senses, Proficiency in Perception. The new version of Trance that we've talked about. And Friend of the Sea, which I believe is unchanged. You can communicate simple ideas to any beast that has a swimming speed. It understands your words, though you have no special ability to understand it in return. So big updates are the updated version of Trance and resistance to cold damage. Tabaxi, not much changes here. You can now be a medium or small Tabaxi. Your climb speed used to, I think, be 20 feet. It is now equal to your walking speed, so now 30-foot climb speed. Your Cat's Claws have now been updated to a D6. Cat's Talent's still there, Dark Vision's still there, and Feline Agility, surprisingly, remains unchecked. Is exactly the same as it was. I thought that might have been a proficiency bonus times per long rest, but there we go. Triton. I think there's some updates here. 30-foot walk speed, 30-foot swim speed equal to your walk speed. Breathe air and water. I think the adjustments are made to this ability. Control air and water. You can cast Fog Cloud with this spell, or with this trait. At 3rd level, you can cast Gust of Wind, and at 5th level, you can cast Water Walk. And then they are once per long rest. You can use spell slots to cast them if you have them, and it's Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma. I believe it used to be Water Wall, not Water Walk. I think that was an adjustment that was made. And then Dark Vision. Emissary of the Sea has been slightly updated. You can communicate simple ideas to any beast, elemental, or monstrosity that has a swimming speed. That was different. I think it used to just be any... I think you used to say any creature. They've now adjusted it to be beast, elemental, or monstrosity. And then Guardian of the Depths, you have resistance to cold damage. Firbolg got some updates here. Firbolg Magic, Detect Magic, and Disguise Self. Those are the same. Now, the Disguise Self from Firbolg Magic allows you to be 3 feet shorter or taller. I believe in the past it only used to let you be 3 feet shorter. They are once per long rest, but can be cast with spell slots, Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma for the casting. Hidden Step, which is as a bonus action, you can turn invisible until the start of your next turn, or until you would make a damage roll, or force a foe to make a saving throw. That has now been updated to be proficiency bonus times per long rest, which is nice. Powerful build remains the same, and I believe Speech of Beast and Leaf is the same, just specifically stating you can communicate in a limited manner to beast, plants, and vegetation. Vegetation being separate from plants. You also have advantage on all charisma checks you make to influence them. That, I believe, is also the same. Goliath got some changes as well, which I thought was interesting because they were just changed in Rime of the Frost Maiden. They updated this ability here and called it Little Giant. You have proficiency with athletics and basically all the effects of powerful build. They just combine those two together. Mountain-born remains the same, resistance to cold damage, acclimated to high altitudes, and Stone's Endurance has been updated to proficiency bonus times per long rest. Orc, total overhaul on the Orc. Adrenaline Rush is a new feature here. You can take the dash action as a bonus action. Can use this trait a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus. When you use it, you get temporary hit points equal to your proficiency bonus. Dark Vision, powerful build, and now Orcs rightfully have Relentless Endurance, but they did lose access to some skill proficiencies that they had in the past. Shifter also got some updates here. Again, rather than being 4 sub-races of Shifter, it has been kind of combined together. Bestial Instincts used to be, depending on the type of Shifter you were, you got a skill. Now you basically just get to choose, would you like a skill proficiency from acrobatics, athletics, intimidation, or survival? You have dark vision. Your shifting ability has changed as well. It's a bonus action still for 1 minute, but when you shift, you gain temporary hit points equal to 2 times your proficiency bonus, and you can use this proficiency bonus times per long rest. So more uses in theory, and it is now 2 times your proficiency bonus in temp HP. So we're starting at 2 and ending at 12. Whenever you shift, you choose one. When you choose the race, you get the extra benefits. If you choose Beast Hide, it's an extra D6 temporary hit points when you shift, plus 1 to your AC. Longtooth is on the turn that you shift, and as a bonus action going forward, you can make an attack with your fangs, dealing a D6 damage with the fangs. Swift Stride is an extra 10 feet of walking speed, and you can move up to 10 feet as a reaction when a foe ends their turn within 5 feet, not provoking attacks of opportunity when you move. And Wild Hunt is advantage on wisdom checks, and no creature within 30 feet can make an attack roll with advantage against you unless you're incapacitated. Changeling, I think I'll have to go back to my phone for the Changeling here. Changeling, the only update is now Changeling can be medium or small creatures. And as such, yeah, you are... Oh, they're Fey. That's interesting. I didn't notice that before. Changeling, you are Fey, which is a huge benefit to the Changeling. You are now medium or small. You still get your proficiency in 2 skills. And Shape Changer, it now says you can... you determine the... let's see, as an action, you can change your appearance and your voice. You determine the specifics of the changes, including your, man, I can't read that, hair length and sex. You also adjust your height and weight. And before it said you could only be like a couple inches higher or smaller, but you couldn't change size. And can change your size between medium and small now, which is new. You can make yourself appear as a person of another race. Though none of your game statistics change, you can't duplicate the appearance of an individual you've never seen. You can stay, your clothing and equipment aren't changed by this trait. You stay in the new form until you use an action to end it or until you die. So while you can go between medium and small creatures, you are still limited to being, your clothes are still limited, right? So if you have big clothes on for a medium creature and go to small, you'll have baggy clothes or tight clothes the other way around. Okay, and then Tortle. I think the only difference that happened to Tortle here is, it's hard to see if I zoom this one in. Natural armor is the same. Shell defense is the same. Nature's intuition, I think, used to just be whatever it was, proficiency in survival. It's now proficiency in a choice of skills. Animal handling, medicine, nature, perception, stealth, or survival. The claws now do a d6 damage, which has been the sort of generic update that we've seen across the board. And you could be medium or small size, not just medium like before. And there you go, folks. That is a 40-minute video giving you the rundown and answering hopefully all of your other questions regarding the updates and leaks from Mordenkainen's Monsters of the Multiverse. So thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.